Okay, hey guys. So I'm gonna have to try and speak a bit loudly today, and I'm gonna try and do my best to enunciate words properly. Unfortunately, something I've noticed with this new board is that I'm not entirely sure why, but the front, like the mic quality, like the clarity and the detection volume, seems to be really balked. I'm not totally sure, but I do know Asus has had problems with this in the past simply because I owned a ROG Delta for a long time, like a year and a few months, and one of their firmware updates actually screwed up the Delta's mic detection. So I don't currently have Deltas, I have Astros right now, and from the last video they're actually quite clear. I noticed from the recording I watched of myself, and I noticed the mic actually sounded really good. Now, the Tai Chi actually handled the audio really well, but unfortunately the Apex, like I said, I'm not really sure why, but yeah, we have very subdued audio, and I guess it might help because I'm sure some of you guys watch in full volume, but I'm going to hope that you guys don't have problems hearing me. So you can see I'm right now in just CS:GO, and I'm not on anything right now. Just gonna start off with this video by just prefacing and just like giving you guys a brief overview. Um, I'm gonna start trying to like find some applicable, because I say applicable because some of it is really cringy, but I want to find some like decently applicable, like royalty-free music to use for these sections of videos that I have. I'm gonna start cutting my videos too, so like a cut commentary type thing, but not really, but a cut kind of. Um, I'm not sure what you would call it, but like a cut video with regards to my content I make, and yeah, so right now I'm just in CS:GO, just going to rant a bit for the first bit. It is going to be interesting, so if you want to skip this part, you can, if you want to get to more relevant parts, but here it goes. So I ended up, I think I mentioned a few videos ago, a long time ago, I wanted to buy Apex, and I wanted to buy Hynix, and I wanted to try and get some good DDR5 speeds and stuff, and I remember I mentioned I had the SP96 chip. Well, yeah, so long story short, I had some developments, some life developments, not like bad, but just like potentially might move next year if I have to. Um, well, not have to, but I mean, like I might end up moving. So I was considering selling my stuff. What happened was the person who bought my stuff just didn't like the Tai Chi, just because for him, I'm not totally sure why. It shouldn't really have been the case, but had some other issue with the board where his fan hub just didn't detect properly, or like, well, not detect, but like something weird where the hub wouldn't turn off the fans when the PC was off, like, and there was still power going to the PSU. I didn't have that problem even when I received the board back to test it out. I never had the problem again. So interesting, but yeah, the Tai Chi just wasn't a good fit for him, and I could tell he was kind of pissed off about it, and I didn't want to make him like use something he didn't like. So we ended up like coming to an agreement, and I ended up giving him my, because he had my stuff already and he had my i9 and everything. So I decided to give him my beta chip because he offered me a fairly good value for it, like a fairly good like amount to upgrade his SP79 chip. And um, considering that I was maybe gonna downgrade anyway in the future, I was like, well, like there aren't many people in our country that are willing to pay for like bin CPUs, so I figured it makes sense to just give it to him. Also, I had already done my benchmarks and stuff like the Y cruncher and all that stuff, so I didn't really require it anymore, to be honest. And I wasn't ever going to use it for like 3D mock, so yeah, that was that. On a SP79 right now. I don't know if I mentioned that before. Um, and the Apex thing, that all happened because I was on Amazon last week, and I was on Amazon UK, and I saw Apex. The price was quite ridiculous. So as you can see, this was the cost of the Apex. So that was total, right? Technically. So the cost of the board was this, and the shipping was this, and then this was the total for shipping and the board. But I actually ended up having to pay custom fees as well because I live in South Africa, so custom fees as well. All in all, the board ended up costing me around, you could say, £450. So if I can draw this, I don't know what the pound logo is. It's like, whoop, it's like that, and then it's like that, and so £450 I paid in total. For the board, which is, if you come to my currency, about this much in rand, so that much African rand, and it's quite insane. Yeah, it's quite insane what I paid for it. Um, yeah, I mean, funny enough, I think when I bought it, it was actually no, no, it wasn't. Wait, ah, yeah, I think I actually overpaid for it because when I bought it, it was like 9-1. So I've got a picture of the board now, and I actually want you guys to notice that. So this area, notice this, right? Do you see how etched this imprint is? And this is Optimum. It says Optimum. So the Optimum logo, this area is really etched. Let me just erase that for you actually, because so this area has got a writing on it that you can't see in this picture because of the sunlight, but it's actually really etched, and that's a good sign. Also, you can't see it in this picture, but the dim slots to the joints are really good. So everything looks totally fine on this board. The only thing that I've noticed was there was like a bit of, like a little bit of like kind of like a few specks on the PCB here by this bottom corner here. Funny enough, I always find that on motherboards, like when people have installed coolers, it's always like these two bottom like standoff areas that take the most like the PCB gets the most imprinted. It's kind of weird. I don't know if we like over tighten our standoffs or something, but no different in this board. Like there was a few specks here in this corner, and on the back there was like a few lines, but really it was nothing crazy. I was really happy with the condition, and I thought that this board was like faulty. To be honest, I thought it was faulty. So I ended up installing the board, booted up fine. So I'm gonna show you a picture, and that's my PC right now. I'm running a 1080 Ti Kingpin, nothing crazy. I paid like nothing for it. And yeah, so this was the board, everything set up. This was a JDEC, because that's where we're gonna get to the actual meat and potatoes now. The cost of the Taichi was a little bit less, maybe $100 less in total than I paid for the Apex. So yeah, I got the Apex for a really good deal. So I thought that the person that sent my Apex back might have seen the board was dead, or maybe it was doing something weird, or it wasn't even running JDEC or whatever. No, actually the board is really good. Like I've noticed no issues thus far. I did have problems stabilizing XMP, but no, actually I think the person just wanted a better sample. In fact, I think it's possible because I noticed that the BIOS the board came with was 0090, which is a test BIOS. Now, by the way, there are like a million BIOS for this board, and you pretty much have to find the one that fits for you. So yeah, it gets a bit tricky because I'm not gonna lie. On the very first BIOS I attempted, I was not stable with XMP. Like my system ran, but it was not stable. I could not stabilize XMP on that BIOS. Ended up speaking to someone from the OCN forums named the BS School, who was actually found out that, along with me, that the what do you call it? The modded AVX 512 version of the BIOS we're using is actually really bad. It's actually really unstable. And there's some weird stuff with like the microcode versions. Like if you don't have the BIOS, like if you don't use the BIOS with the correct microcode, like say some BIOSes you can mod to allow 512, but some you can't. And if you do mod them, you can actually really mess with the BIOS stability. Now, I'm not saying you're gonna like brick the board, which is actually interesting. Like you won't actually brick the board by like modding a microcode, and then like let's say the microcode you modded wasn't like actually it doesn't work well with the BIOS. It doesn't actually cause anything. You can actually still use Easy Flash in your BIOS. You can Q Flash. Everything is fine. The board works fine. Everything works fine. It's just that you get like a lot of instability if you're using the wrong microcode, and you know, it gets pretty weird with Apex. Like you have to get the BIOS exact for your board. Like I'm not even joking. With the Apex, you literally have to test every single test BIOS and determine which ones your board can take and which they can't, which you can't take. It's extremely tedious, but yeah, that's actually the requirement with the Apex. You can't just plug and play the Apex. You can't. It doesn't matter which version you have. Well, some people's Apexes I've heard online do actually work with all BIOS versions quite well. Just like with my thing is, the Z690 F was no different. Like the very first BIOS revision of my board was completely unusable, and the second revision, same, unusable. The only revision that actually worked well was the 0811, which came out like in the last week of December. That was the only BIOS for the first BIOS for my board that actually allowed me to boot my system and actually like run stuff. Like, you know, the first few BIOS is literally like you couldn't do anything. Like there's literally nothing you could do on the system. It was crazy. And you know, I was having training issues, just like training the memory. Like it was crazy. So that was, that was quite a thing. But with the Apex, I've now found that I was able to run my XMP stable on 0090. I'm just gonna pull up these three for you, but they're all exactly the same. So what exactly are we looking at right here? Okay, so what we are looking at is just a bunch of Intel burn test tests. So as you can see, 0090, it's XMP obviously. Now, some of you guys are going to be like, well, why are you showing us XMP? XMP is not impressive on Apex. Okay, fair enough, cool. I'm showing this because I want you guys to understand you have to get XMP stable, because if you can get XMP stable on auto settings, like these settings, these ones, right? If you can get XMP stable on those. So the reason why I just showed you guys XMP is because if you can get XMP stable on a board with auto VDD2 and SA or DDR5, like I just showed you guys, what that means is your BIOS and your board, and I guess the way your RAM DIMMs are arranged. So what I mean is, like, one of the DIMMs in channel A and the other in channel B. I'm not even kidding. That makes a difference. It makes a big difference. Like, I've actually had significant stability differences between, and this is not something I've only experienced. I mean, someone on Bulldoze's Discord also kind of gave their own account of what I was talking about, and they were like, yo, I also saw that. And they also had kind of like varying stability at like a high DDR4 OC, depending on which DIMM slot the stick was in. So yeah, you literally need to make sure that the DIMM that you're using, or the DIMMs you're using, are arranged in their like ideal arrangement. Like if you aren't, like if your DIMMs are literally, like if the one DIMM is in the wrong slot, like literally you will compromise stability. Like you could compromise XMP, you could actually require like significantly different and like more difficult, more like maybe even higher like settings to get something stable. Like just by having the DIMMs arranged like unoptimally. Like I'm not even joking. Like it literally is, it's a big difference. Because initially what I did was I had 0061 on the Apex, and then I tried like 1304, I tried 0086, I tried 9902, I tried a lot of BIOSes, and eventually what happened was I ended up going from my original arrangement, which I used on the Taichi, with the one DIMM in channel A, and I switched them, and then yesterday I was like, let me switch them back, because maybe the previous arrangement was actually better, because I don't know. And I did that, and yeah, believe it or not, eventually with 0090 and the arrangement I had, yeah, stable. So as you just saw, like 90 runs total burn test, and I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Initially, what happened was I trained in on the secondary BIOS chip to test out the BIOS, and then I tried XMP and auto settings just to see if it would work. I didn't think it would work. And it didn't work initially, but I did pass like 10 runs of burn test, and I was like, that's weird. Because before, I'm telling you right now, guys, this is important to note. Please, if anyone is watching this video that actually has an Apex, if you've been struggling, please listen to what I'm going to say closely. The variance between stability that I have now, the initial stability that I had testing 0090 for the first time, and the previous 20 to 30 hours of fucking testing was, I cannot describe. Like, my system went from not even close to stable to, like, with XMP, to literally, like, completely stable. Like, it went from, like, not even remotely, like, not even a single run would pass on, like, wide crunch or anything. Like, it was completely unstable to now, like, where it is now. And it's insane, like, how big a difference a BIOS revision, arrangement of DIMMs, and just, like, getting the caps drained. Like, literally, like, I retrained it. I don't know what I changed. I changed something, retrained, and then all of a sudden I passed burn test 30 runs. So I think it's like trolling me. I'm like, there's no fucking way this is stable. Like, there's no way. I refuse to believe it. So I go to my primary BIOS chip and I put the settings in. First I flash 0090. put the settings in, save the profile, load it, go to Windows. Immediately notice that my keyboard is not as responsive, my mouse isn't responsive, and my LAN driver isn't loading. So I'm like, whoa, this is indicative of like classic uncore instability. Yo, what do you know? First calculation of burn test, errors. Okay, so there's no way this is stable. I go back to my secondary BIOS chip, test again, pass 30 runs again. That was so trippy. Then what I do is I switch back to the primary BIOS on my EC, on my controller, like on the board, and I drain power for like 10 seconds, clear CMOS for 15 seconds, and reload the profile, go back, test it again, and what do you know? Primary BIOS chip is stable. So strange. Like, I cannot describe how weird that is. But yeah, to me, it's now past 90 runs total of burn test, with the same settings. Like, it's stable. I think it's stable. And even if it isn't like 100% stable, like even if it is a little bit unstable, like if there is some test I won't pass, it doesn't matter, because the important thing is, like, the scientific data I've derived is that it went from absolutely not even close to stable to 90 runs of burn test, which to me is like significant improvements. That's indicative of like the board finally behaving somewhat correctly. Now, I don't know if the guy that had the board before me, like if he had like decent results in it, like 66 megabits per second. That's like the highest I could boot. And I think maybe this person wanted like 7,000 plus. Like maybe he was hoping Amazon would give him like a second Apex that was like a 2022 Apex. And yeah, but when I bought this board, there was literally none in stock. Like, there was no Apexes left on Amazon, so I have no idea what happened. I don't know why, but even on Ace's site, there's currently no Apexes for sale. So I don't know what happened. If maybe the Apex is like short supply, or they stopped making them. I don't know what happened, but the Apexes are disappearing. And I am just happy this board does XMP and auto, because now I can start playing around and actually like messing with it and actually getting something proper going. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to talk about. Like, important takeaways from this video is like the weird like BIOS variations. Like, it's even worse than my well, no, let's not be crazy. The Z690-F on 0803, literally, like, I couldn't boot the system. Like, I was crashing after like 5 seconds of use. That was some next level shit. So let's not get that crazy. But yeah, this was, I mean, the Apex was not happy on any of the other BIOSes I tried. And the funniest thing is, the BIOS that actually finally worked out for my board, the one that the person left on the board initially anyway, that BIOS actually has like a very unique microcode. It has Ucode 18 in the BIOS, but it doesn't say 18. So I don't know. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, it should say 17 in the MM tool, but it doesn't say, there's no 17. So 17 is not present, but somehow Ucode 18 is active. I don't know, but whatever. So anyway, this BIOS is magical. I don't care why it works, but can't describe how relieved I am, because if I had to refund this board for Amazon, I would not have been reimbursed shipping and custom fees, and that would have been like literally 25% of the cost. So yeah, that would have been really bad. But yeah, guys, so this was hopefully a fun video. I'll try and get something done and bring you some actual content with the Apex. I'm gonna go actually over one last thing that I wanted to go over. First off, ignore these symbols, because these aren't really what this is about, but just to pay attention to the sign graph, because this is what I want to kind of bring to your attention. From my experience, I'm starting to think that with Alder Lake, okay, let's say VD2 is somewhere like over, let's say it's over here somewhere, right? On the y-axis, right? I think that for the x-axis, I'm starting to think that if you had VDD2 on like this portion of the y-axis over here, right? If you go here, I think that SA is almost like this. Like, SA actually, like, as you increase VDD2, right? You have to sort of increase SA to kind of like, well, no, it's not actually making sense. I think I'm doing the axes wrong. I think I should do it like maybe here and then. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is, I'm starting to think that system agent scales, like, where the higher VD2 is, the more system agent you require, or sometimes not, but you actually have like different points of stability for SA. Like SA, at a certain amount of VDD2 has like different regions where it's stable. And oh, actually, this makes sense because as you go higher on VDD2 over here, if you look like over here, um, you start to get like you start to get within the usable range of voltage. I mean, so if you have a cutoff somewhere, you start to get like less and less of these like kind of I don't know what you call them again, but these like points of possible stability, and they kind of get higher too. So as drive voltage increases, you have to actually increase system agent to compensate. But I found as well, in some cases, you have to reduce drive voltage to stabilize higher um, DRAM rail voltages. Now it's so freaking weird, but um, I'm starting to like get very confused by DDR5. But the important thing to note is just try and get your XMP first of all to run at auto. Because if your board's BIOS can actually run XMP at auto, it means that whatever the subsystem is doing with this BIOS and your board and its DIMMs and its um, like signal training algorithms, it's working. Because if you can't get XMP auto stable, it means that more than likely um, something on your board's BIOS, the training procedure is not nailing your particular DIMMs or your IMC. You have to find a BIOS that gets you a good, easy baseline. If you cannot run something like burn test like I showed you at auto settings, then something is fundamentally wrong. Like you cannot overclock on a DDR5 system if you can't even run XMP. It's very important you remember that. And also, with testing XMPs, as long as XMP trains, generally it's indicative of the DIMMs aren't faulty or like they're not like duds like my first kit of DDR5. The screener should have screened the DIMMs to run at their like rated voltages, and I say voltages because it's 2 rails, and then their timings and the data rate. Now, you shouldn't have to do a test looking for memory errors because what you should be looking for is you should be looking for errors on the data line, like on the channel itself. Like you should have to worry about IMC errors, but you shouldn't have to worry about actual like memory access errors because the memory itself should be stable. What can vary is the stability of your IMC and your board, because as you know, Intel don't guarantee your IMC more than like 4800 on Alder Lake, and your board is only rated up to like I don't know whatever it gives you, but even still like your board has a QVL and stuff whatever. So the point is that as long as your BIOS and your board are in agreement and your IMC is as well, if you can train XMP, run it auto and not error, you're fine. You're worried about IMC errors. You aren't worried about data access errors. You're worried about errors on the actual IMC or the channel. Like you're not worried about errors on the RAM sticks because they shouldn't have any problems. They should be fine. It should be errors related to the board and the CPU itself. So, yeah, that's kind of the thing. And I hope that this video was interesting and hopefully helpful, and hopefully like I hope I can give you guys some Apex owners out there, like, well, to say it again, but I hope I can give you guys hope with your boards, because I don't want you guys to give up and be like, oh, this board's cursed, like my Apex sucks, like, oh, I can't use it. Like I hate going on OCN and seeing like guys say the Apex they have is like shit and like how they can't run stable whatever XMP, even some people can't run XMP stable. It's sad to see that. Um, Honestly, I wish I no. I was planning to use my Elgato to like try and show you guys the process of stabilizing XMP and then stabilizing a OC, but I've come to realize it might take so long that it's unreasonable to actually even take a video of it, because it's not gonna. I'd have to cut that extended session so much. It would be ridiculous. It would be like 10, 20 hours of footage to cut, and that I can't edit 20 hours of footage. There's no way. Like that's not gonna happen. So it took me literally like 25 hours total to get XMP running. Why? Because I had to swap the DIMMs twice. I tested 2 configurations of DIMMs on the channels. Tested like 6 BIOS revisions. Tested different U codes. I can't describe how many times I errored. Like guys, imagine running a test like for 5 hours and not getting a single calculation correct. Like think about how, like I was convinced my board was done. I was like convinced it was cursed. I was like, there's no way. This board cannot do XMP. It's clear. Like there's no way. I've tried everything. I tried everything except I hadn't tried that one BIOS that I had missed out just because it didn't seem like a popular BIOS, and I just didn't think to run it. And yeah, lo and behold, I tried the BIOS and it was fine. So just keep your head in the game and don't be unreasonable. Like the Apex has a rating of up to 6600 megabits per second. Like surely they had to validate these boards somehow. And people are saying QC is really bad. I mean, is it really that bad? I mean, it can't be that bad because from what I've seen, people aren't like not getting like 6,000, like 6,200. I think maybe a bad BIOS revision locks you down to like 6,200, but then I think maybe if you get a good BIOS revision, you can finally get your 6,600 that they promise you, which is what you're meant to be getting. Now, anything above that is not guaranteed, so don't even worry about it. Like, if you can't get 7,000, I'm sorry, but they never told you get 7,000. Like, they never guaranteed, they never gave it to you. They never assured it to you. So, don't be surprised if you can't do 7,000. Like, if you can't do 7,000, whatever, like, just do 6,600. Try and get the command rate one working, and then you're fine. 7,000 is not guaranteed. Plus, it requires a ton of voltage. Like, you can't run 7,000 like C30 without like 1.55 volts. Like on most kits. Like some kits can run at like 1.5 and like 1.45, but that's like god tier bins, man. That's like crazy bins. I mean, of Hynix. You need 1.55 on like most systems. I've seen most guys run like 1.55, and I mean, if you want a daily 1.55, go ahead. But I can't recommend it. I would stay below 1.5 to be honest. But yeah, so that's the video, and I'm gonna go and edit this now, and hopefully make it look kind of nice. And yeah, I'll see you guys hopefully soon with some actual successful OCs.